The facts of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's life seems like they were ripped from a Hollywood movie script. Assassination attempts, the global dominance of the illegal drug trade, prison escapes, and contacts with movie stars deep in the jungle. It would be difficult to believe if there was no hard evidence to back it up. Even by drug lord standards, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's life before his capture was anything from ordinary. Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Lorera, nicknamed El Chapo for his 5'6" size, began his climb to the top of the drug business in his early teens as a prolific marijuana dealer in the 1970s. He eventually rose to heights that would rival even that of the most powerful men in history. However, now that he has been captured, who takes the spot as the biggest drug lord in the world? Keep watching to find out all about the man hidden in the shadows. Joaquin Guzman began his rise to power where he began distributing cocaine in western Mexico under the supervision of drug lord Miguel Gallardo. Guzman genuinely rose up to the major leagues of international drug trafficking after Gallardo's imprisonment in the 1980s, expanding the legendary Sinaloa cartel. He quickly established himself as one of the country's most formidable drug traffickers, putting himself on the radar of both Mexican and U.S. law enforcement agencies. Guzman would later serve 8 years in prison during the 1990s before escaping prison in 2001. Even while he was imprisoned, his cartel grew in strength. In the decade after his monumental escape from prison, he reached the level of fame of historical kingpins like Pablo Escobar. At one point, he was in charge of about a quarter of the world's illegal drugs. But after being apprehended by authorities in 2014, he fell from that peak. Though he tried to escape again, he was quickly recaptured in 2016. He has been detained in the United States since that time. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was one of the world's most prominent drug traffickers as the former leader of the Sinaloa cartel. However, during his 2018 trial, Guzman's attorneys claimed that he was the victim of a scheme orchestrated by the cartel's genuine boss, Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia. After Guzman's imprisonment in 2014, Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia seized control of the Sinaloa cartel. Unlike Guzman, El Mayo has never been imprisoned and remains at large to this day. Somehow, he became the biggest drug lord in the world while remaining in the shadows. While hundreds of thousands of pages of evidence indicated that Guzman was the head of the Sinaloa cartel, Zambada's mysterious operations remain mostly unknown. What is certain is that El Mayo took over the Sinaloa cartel after El Chapo was arrested, and he is still at large today. Those are the only things known about this man of mystery. Questions have not only remained but have multiplied. Is Ismael El Mayo Zambada real? What happened to him? And how did Zambada come to command a drug trafficking enterprise while remaining hidden? Who is Ismael Zambada Garcia? Ismael Zambada Garcia, born in 1948 in the Sinaloa state capital of Culiacan, Mexico, was an ambitious criminal from the beginning. When he was 16, the poor farmer began dealing narcotics. He began small and worked his way up. Soon after, he was linked to the Guadalajara cartel, a prominent drug trafficking gang that dominated the 1980s. The cartel once controlled nearly all of the drug trafficking between Mexico and the United States. But everything changed after the capture of founder Miguel Felix Gallardo, popularly known as the Godfather. Gallardo was captured in 1989 and condemned to 40 years in jail by American authorities. After serving 27 years of his sentence, he was resentenced to 37 years in jail in 2017 for the murder of a DEA agent. While this was undoubtedly a win for law enforcement, Gallardo's arrest triggered bloodshed among many of the drug lords who were left without one of their most powerful commanders. It also divided the once mighty cartel into several factions, the most infamous of which was the Sinaloa cartel. In the early 1990s, El Chapo and El Mayo are credited with assembling the Sinaloa cartel from the ruins of the Guadalajara cartel. Decades of horrible brutality, intimidation, and illicit drug trafficking around the world have elevated the Sinaloa cartel to the status of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Zambada, quote, controls the Sinaloan police, according to Javier Valdez, the creator of the Sinaloa daily newspaper. And it's apparent that Ismael Zambada Garcia's power has only risen over time. It is unknown where Ismael Zambada got the nickname El Mayo. However, according to Urban Dictionary, El Mayo is a Mexican way of saying LMAO, which translates to laughing my ass off. Does this imply that the cartels are mocking authorities by branding Ismael Zambada El Mayo? Who knows? It might be. Another idea is that because the Spanish word Mayo means May, Zambada's birthday falls in the month of May. Let us simply hope that the latter theory is right. The Sinaloa Cartel's ruthless rise. Every year, the Sinaloa Cartel ships and distributes large quantities of methamphetamine, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl to the United States. It has distribution hubs in several cities, including Phoenix, Los Angeles, Denver, Atlanta, and Chicago. The cartel delivers merchandise into the United States after obtaining supplies from countries such as Panama and Colombia. Illegal substances are typically distributed through border crossing points along Mexico's border. Trucks, submarines, aerial transportation, and tunnel systems are all examples of this. Once the commodities have been safely transported to the United States, the distribution facilities proceed. The cartel's significant growth in prominence throughout the 1990s can be traced largely to Zambada's ability to build partnerships with former Guadalajara cartel members. He was quite skilled at coordinating illicit activities with equally powerful industry players. Of course, controlling territory and acquiring larger chunks of the pie required a merciless indifference to bloodshed, which Zambada possessed. He was a key member of the violent Amado Carrillo Fuentes organization, also known as the Juarez Cartel. Zambada worked with Fuentes for years before absorbing his sections into the Sinaloa Cartel when Fuentes died in 1997. This consolidation was far from voluntary. Rosario Niebla Cardoza, Zambada's wife, said, quote, "From 1992 to 2000, the days were harsh and bloody, with a stupid, senseless war that ruined many families and left many people in misery." It didn't help that Zambada was holding a prominent leadership position in the Sinaloa Cartel at the time. While El Chapo was in prison from 1993 to 2001, El Mayo was in charge of the Sinaloa Cartel's expansion. He was also the one who dispatched a private chopper to El Chapo after he escaped from Puente Grande. It's no surprise that El Mayo is frequently linked with El Chapo's rise following his first prison escape. Zambada Garcia emerged as one of Mexico's most powerful drug traffickers in the late 90s, capable of trafficking multi-ton quantities of cocaine and marijuana, as well as multi-kilogram quantities of heroin. Despite being indicated for drug trafficking offenses by Mexico's Attorney General's office in 1998 and the FBI in 2003, Zambada simply vanished. El Mayo's mysterious disappearance. Zambada, a wanted man since 1998, forged ahead under El Chapo until his capture in 2016, his third capture after escaping from prison a second time. While El Chapo remains imprisoned, El Mayo is free and dangerous. Meanwhile, the U.S. government has offered a $5 million reward to anyone who can provide information leading to Zambada's capture. According to Zambada's 2009 U.S. indictment, he employed what the Mexicans call sicarios, or hitmen, who carried out hundreds of acts of violence at their discretion, including killings, kidnappings, tortures, and violent collections of drug debts. Meanwhile, in the 2000s, Mexican President Felipe Calderón focused on another organization, the Tijuana Cartel. As a result, the Sinaloa Cartel exploited its rival's weakness and went forward with full might to conquer its territories. As a result, the Tijuana Cartel has mostly disintegrated over the previous decade, leaving the Sinaloa Cartel at the apex of the mountain, with its worth valued at a huge $20 billion. Because Zambada is still at large, it's assumed he's still pulling the strings from the shadows. Meanwhile, upon El Chapo's arrest, an entirely new war broke out. Three factions rose to prominence: Damaso Lopez Nez, who helped El Chapo escape from prison twice, El Chapo's sons, Jes Alfredo and Ivan Archivaldo, and El Chapo's brother, Aureliano El Guano Guzman. The ensuing bloodshed was astonishing, with 764 murders in Sinaloa alone in the first half of 2017. It was the state's highest homicide rate in 6 years. It was terror. The word for what was happening in Sinaloa was simply generalized terror. It hadn't been the usual kind of shootout. They were coming with everything they had, high-caliber weapons, full arsenals, and vehicle-mounted artillery. Though they are always battling for power, the three parties are still thought to be operating the drug trafficking enterprise under Zambada's umbrella. He allegedly mediates between them while also investing in a number of Mexican enterprises. He has an amazingly varied portfolio. Despite having only an elementary education, he has obtained what we might call a Harvard-level education from some of Mexico's most prolific, knowledgeable, and cunning drug lords. In the end, though, things don't look bright for the 72-year-old, who apparently suffers from diabetes and is hiding out in Mexico's Sinaloa region's highlands. However, his specific location remains unknown. One of the main reasons El Mayo has escaped capture for so long is that he keeps a low profile. He has only given one interview to the Mexican magazine Proceso in 2010. In the interview, he detailed living in fear of being apprehended and stated that the military had been close enough to catch him at least 4 times. In 2014, his residence in Mexico was raided, but he was able to flee thanks to leaks. Prior to that, his brother, Reynaldo El Rey Zambada, was jailed on drug trafficking charges in Mexico City in 2008. His eldest son, Vicente Zambada Niebla, was detained by the Mexican army in 2009. Despite the information presented, El Mayo has never been apprehended. The only time the intelligent businessman was captured was when he spoke with Vicente on the phone in 2011. He has eluded authorities due to his strategic thinking and his ability to ensure that no one in his community is unhappy. "I fled to the hills," Ishmael Zambada Garcia said. "I know the foliage, the streams, the rocks, everything. They'll only catch me if I slow down and get sloppy, like El Chapo." Conclusion: if you think drug lords like Pablo Escobar were powerful, then you have no idea what Zambada does away from the spotlight. This genius drug lord has managed to evade capture his entire career. He is undoubtedly the biggest drug lord in the entire world right now. How do you think he will be captured?